All right, then we're going to go to our lesson 25 in A Course in Miracles. So lesson 25, and so far, we've done 24 of these. This week, though, I wanted to just touch on those because remember last Friday we ended on "I'm determined to see." So that was the lesson that we went into the weekend with. And then we started out this week with some pretty challenging ones, and this is where we're starting to get a little bit deeper into things. On Monday it was I am determined to see things differently. So that whole idea that you could choose that as you see things to see them differently if they're not serving you and serving you towards joy, peace, and fulfillment. And then on Tuesday we talked about what I see as a form of vengeance. This is where it got a little dark, I think, in some cases, that and how we've been programmed and how our minds work. That really don't serve us well. We then talked on Wednesday about I can escape from the world I see by giving up attack thoughts. And that was a continuation of lesson 22. And then our lesson of yesterday was I do not perceive my own best interests. Now this is an interesting one. I'm going to take the screen share off because I just want to see what happened as you did this exercise around lesson 24 yesterday. Anyone have anything happen as you looked at how you do not know your own best interests or the goal identification section? How'd you do with that? You're also quiet.
Yeah, I didn't do it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and Nancy, we talked about this already. One of the cool things, though, I'll just say that if you didn't do it, we've got 2 days on the weekends too, and so the thing I'll share with everybody is these do layer on top of each other. I spoke earlier before we launched this that I thought they were freestanding and they're not, and so that's why I chose to record this section of every one of these and then put the resource over on that website because you can always go catch up and the idea was that we were going to ask you to say identify a situation. So in this situation involving blank, I would like to have this happen and this happen. I touched on this, I think in this group last week maybe. Did we ever talk about journaling here in this Power Up? Because I have so many conversations in a week, sometimes they run together, but I'm going to pretend we didn't then because you all have blank looks on your face. So as this lesson 24 was laid out, I got thinking about an exercise I was taught when I was in a coaching relationship back in 2008. And in 2008, I was journaling every day, 7 days a week. That was part of my agreements in this program. I was to do a journal entry every day, 7 days a week. And when I was setting this up with the coach, I said to her, I go, "Why 7 days a week?" She goes, "Because you're never alone, or you're never off from your thoughts." Right, and so journaling in the context with her was to capture thoughts on specific topics. And so for the week, I would focus on that and I would journal about it. One of the techniques she taught me, though, out of that program with her was a version of lesson 24. Because when you say in a situation involving blank, it's something that might be upsetting to you or something you need more clarity about, I would like blank to happen and blank to happen. It's getting more clear about what you would ideally want your result to be. And the lesson then was that we would... like if I'm going into a meeting that was difficult, and I had one really distinct back in 2008. There was a Keller Williams Market Center in Wausau, Wisconsin that launched in 2005. So a couple years after Madison West opened, the same year Madison East opened, and it really didn't launch well. They didn't have enough people. There were a lot of dynamics at play that didn't have it launch well, and I got asked if I would be interested in helping them correct that ship. And ego, so this is that idea that I do not perceive my own best interest. My ego said, "Oh yeah, go do it. You could fix anything." And so I spent about 2.5 or 3 years, 2 to 3 days a week up there, and the rest of the time back here in Madison. And I invested well over $100,000 in it, and it failed. And I had to have a meeting with the other two investors that were there. So there were three of us that we were all going to lose, in mass, probably about $500,000 between the three of us, and equally. And I was just scared. I was nervous. I wasn't sleeping, all kinds of, the stuff that goes on up here. And my coach said, write down the story in your journal tomorrow of how you want the meeting to go, including the outcomes. And I'm like, what? I go, that's just crazy. She goes, no, just do it. And her name is Kim Addis. She's amazing. I've hired her as a coach for me multiple times over the last 10 years when there are things I want to work on. And I call her my thinking coach. And she said, and I said, okay. And so I did that, and it was really amazing what happened in that meeting, because it was almost like I scripted everybody's part with the outcomes that I desired. So I've taught that to a lot of people, and I've had some call it like their journal now is their little magic book of happenings and happiness. I've heard somebody call it that. She's like, it's almost not fair. This is a part of that. It's getting clarity around what it is you want, and it's trying to do it in a way that removes the egoic mind. And that's really what this lesson's about. So it's a powerful one. And again, I would say if you didn't have a chance to do it yesterday, this is one that I would definitely work on over the weekend. Let's take a look at today's lesson, though, because that's it's fairly involved as well. So I want to make sure we have enough time to do justice to laying it out. That was lesson 24. Lesson 25 should be right here. Yes. So today's lesson is I do not know what anything is for. It says, this is from the lesson text. It says, purpose is meaning. Purpose is meaning. Today's idea that I do not know what anything is for explains why nothing you see means anything. You do not know what anything you see is for. Therefore, anything you see is meaningless to you. Everything is for your own best interests. Your own best interest is what everything is for. That is what everything's purpose is. That is what everything means. This first paragraph is a little confusing, so I'm going slow. It is not recognizing everything is for your own best interests that your goals become unified. It is in recognizing everything is for your own best interests that what you see is given meaning. So when we say everything is for your own best interest, it's simply that everything you see then you are giving meaning to. So you perceive the world and everything in your perceived world as meaningful in terms of ego goals. These ego goals have nothing to do with your own best interests because the ego is not you. This false identification that the ego is you makes you incapable of understanding what anything is for. As a result, you are bound to misuse this false identification that the ego is you. When you believe that the ego is not you, you will try to withdraw. The ego's goals you have assigned to the world, instead of attempting to reinforce the ego's goals that you have assigned to the world. Let me say that again, because I had to do this a bunch of times to even get it. So when you believe that the ego is not you, so that's the key phrase, right? Ego's job, it's the physical body, and its job is to keep us safe. It's to make you stand apart. You remember all these things we've talked about over the last number of weeks on ego. So when you believe that the ego is not you, you will try to withdraw the ego's goals you have assigned to the world, instead of attempting to reinforce the ego's goals that you have assigned to the world. So it's saying that once you recognize that the ego is not you, you can then separate the ego's goals from who you really are. And that's, again, in your own best interests. So another way of describing the goals that you have perceived is to say that the goals you now perceive are all concerned with personal ego interests. Since you have no real personal ego interests, your egoic goals are really concerned with nothing. In cherishing your egoic goals, therefore, you have no goals at all. And thus, since you cherish your egoic goals, and you do not know what anything is for. So before you can make any sense out of this exercise for today, because you're probably as confused as I was the first time, one more thought is necessary. At the most superficial level, you do not recognize personal egoic goals. Yet purpose cannot be understood at these egoic levels. For example, you do not understand that a telephone is for the purpose of talking to someone who is not physically in your immediate vicinity. What you do not understand is what you want to reach them for. And what you want to reach him for is what makes your contact with him meaningful or not. So it's not the telephone that makes it meaningful, it's what the intention of connecting with whoever your calling is. So it's crucial to your learning to be willing to give up the egoic goals that you've established for everything. The recognition that the egoic goals you have established for everything are meaningless rather than good or bad is the only way to accomplish this. So the idea for today, that I do not know what anything is for, is a step in the right direction. So 6 practice periods for this today. So 6 practice periods for it. So let's see, I guess I got that one in the wrong spot. Here we go, this is it. So here it is, it's 6 practice periods today. Each period should begin with the slow repetition of saying today's lesson is, I do not know what anything is for. I do not know what anything is for. Followed by, when you say that, then follow it by looking about you and letting your glance rest on whatever happens to catch your eye. Whatever happens to catch your eye, near or far, important, not important, human, non-human, doesn't matter. Whatever catches your eye is where you stop. And with your eyes resting on the subject, you say to yourself, for example, I do not know what this chair is for. Let's say that's where I stop my gaze. I do not know what this glass is for. So that's caught my eye. So that's what now the lesson is to be done slowly and about 2 minutes. So it's about just be with that after you say it. I do not know what this pen is for. So we've done similar versions of this in the past, other than the phrase is different. So say that I do not know what anything is for quite slowly without shifting your eyes from the subject until you have completed the statement about that subject, which is, I start by saying I do not know what anything is for, and then I start to look around, and whatever my eyes stop at, I would say I do not know what that coaster is for. And then I would finish by saying again, I do not know what anything is for. And then I move on to the next subject. So then I would again, I do not know what anything is for. Look around, find the next thing, whatever, near or far, human, inhuman, whatever, and then just do the same thing again. And we're asking you to do 6 times this exercise, 6 times this time around, I should say. All right, so I'm gonna, what I'd like to do is I'm gonna leave this slide up, so if you wanna write down the kind of the lesson itself, we're gonna try to break this down a little bit with a little more clarity, if you will. So that lesson of I do not know what anything is for, you do not understand what anything is for because you do not understand an item's true purpose. Your purpose gives something the meaning you assign to it. The true meaning of an item is different from a definition or name that you have assigned to that given object. When you name something, you define and limit it. So let me say it again. When you name something, you define and you limit it. Your definition of any object must come from your current belief system. We have been brought up in a fear-based thought system that believes you are a separate ego body. It believes in limitations and lack. Because of your ego's basic misunderstanding of whom and what you are, its fear-based thought system has failed to understand your true purpose. So your ego represents your current false beliefs about whom and what you really are. Your ego is how you define yourself. Your ego becomes your thought system, in which is based upon your belief in limitation, lack, and separation. It is the embodiment of your fears. From this erroneous thought system, you attempt to give meaning to your perceived world of provisional reality. Since the ego perceives itself to be the body, it imagines a world whose purpose is to support and provide evidence that separation, limitation, and lack really exist in our world. The ego argues for its rightness, not your happiness. If there's no other thing you would jot down from today, I love that phrase. And so it's our ego argues for our rightness, not our happiness. So your false identification with your ego's goals leads to the misalignment of your world with the real purpose of the world. So your world is your own play school for you to learn, to grow, enjoy, and be. It is a place where you can be what you are, or you can pretend to be something that you are not. In this dimension, you get to demonstrate and experience who you really believe you currently are. See, time is the place in which beliefs can be tested and changed. This fascinates the learning process. Your egoic belief system, however, has turned your world into a place where it believes you must struggle for the limited resources that it needs to survive. So you've got to struggle for your ego's limited resources. Your ego believes that you must earn whatever it needs, or your ego will die with the body that it perceives to be its home. So it's on the physical and bodily level that your ego understands and defines your world of perception. Your ego identifies its very existence with your body, and therefore its viewpoint is focused on the body's needs. The ego accepts the body's limitations as its own. It defines everything as a separate physical autonomous entity. It adopts a fear-based worldview that if it is to survive, you must earn the ego's share of the limited resources that all it needs. Your ego's world becomes a place of struggle and conflict in which you must earn the limited resources that your ego believes it needs for its own survival. To your ego, your worth is determined by your ability to obtain what the ego needs to survive. So if you fail to provide for your ego's needs, your ego will try to blame, shame, and guilt you into doing its bidding. So it came down pretty heavy on ego, didn't it, today? I was thinking about this. There was a mega camp a couple years ago, actually. I had a chance to go to dinner with a group from Southern California that I was friends with some of their leadership. And they had an agent from another company with them, as I just kind of checked Keller Williams out. And I was sitting across the table from this agent at dinner that night, and he goes, "Can I share something of what I've observed so far?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And he goes, "It seems like there is no ego in this company." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Everyone is just so open and helping and helpful and sharing ideas and sharing what's working, and there doesn't seem to be any posturing." And I'd never thought about it that way. And I was like, that was my experience as well. Whether it was someone doing $3 million in gross commission income or someone doing 30,000, they treated anyone who came up to them the same. They were happy to help. And I think, I use that example because we had a woman named Linda McKissick who, when she learned we were opening in Madison back in 2002, she said, "If I can come help you guys in any way, shape, or form, just let me know." And so we called in that chip and we said, "Would you do a half-day training on building wealth?" And she was at that point just beginning to be one of our top profit share people in the whole company. She and her husband ended the last couple of years #1 in the company for profit share, and it was close to $2 million in passive income per year over the last couple of years that they've been doing really, really wonderfully with it. And when I was taking her back to the airport, I said, "You did such a wonderful job. What can I pay you?" And she goes, "You don't have to pay me anything." And I'm like, "Why would you come do this if you're not getting paid?" And she said, she goes, "Someone helped me. They reached back and helped me get started. They got me here. I'm just doing the same thing." So it's that idea of paying it forward. And I love that because then this agent went on to say about ego. He said, what's dawned on me is the amount of energy maintaining ego takes. And that was a really strong statement because I was like, I go, "Tell me more about that." And he said, "Well, think about this. If I'm spending a portion of my day worried about how I'm looking to the other people in my market, that's energy spent on something that isn't moving me to what I say I really want." He goes, "So if I can be in a place where there is no ego, it's so freeing." And I'm like, wow, there is something in that. because it is about just being focused on you. One of my a good friend of mine who I coached for a number of years he's over in Fargo, North Dakota. His name is Jeff Shipley. He has a phrase that I learned from him a couple years ago, and he said, "What others think of me is none of my business. What other people think of me is none of my business." Is how he's, and I love that, because that's eliminating ego. It's not what the ego says it has to be. It's what you, and when we have ego at play, it is very difficult to be moving towards happiness, fulfillment, or peace. So that's really what this does. Now, a couple quick questions, and we'll wrap this up. Just to ponder as we go into the weekend. So, I do not know what anything is for is our lesson. And again, the reminder 6 times a day, just gaze, whatever catches your gaze. Say, I do not know what anything is for. I do not know what this lamp is for. I do not know what anything is for. So let's just practice that. A couple things to keep in mind. If you change the purpose of your world from earning an external reward to learning who you really are, how would your relationship with your world change? So I'm saying that if you were to change the purpose of your world from earning an external reward to learning who you really are, how would your relationship with your world change? Number 2 is this one. This lesson states that everything is always for your own best interests. If this is true, how would this fact change your story about how you are a victim of your world? And then finally, can you still be a victim if everything has always been for you in your own best interests? So if everything that happened was in your own best interest, how could you be a victim? Ooh, that's the tough one, because victims find they gain energy in being victims. If we take that away, it's going to be it's interesting to see what would happen. So with that, I'm going to ask if there's any questions on anything we've covered today or this week, actually. I had screen share off already, didn't I? Sorry. So any questions whatsoever? All right, guys, have a great weekend. Remember, safe distancing, right? So it's still 6 feet. Wear your masks when you go out. Wash your hands. What's the song you sing when you wash your hands? It's Happy Birthday Twice, isn't it? That gets you 20 seconds. Am I right about that? All right, perfect. So, so unless you sing really slow, and then it's 3 times. All right, thanks, everybody. We'll see you on Monday. Have an awesome weekend.
Thanks so much, Darren.
My pleasure.